الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. This is the first session in the fiqh class, inshallah, from the book Fiqh Made Easy, or الفقه أو رسالة في الفقه الميسر by Sheikh as-Sadlan, Saleh as-Sadlan. And you have the reason why we chose this book because it has an English translation, so it's easy, inshallah ta'ala, to follow for those who wants to read from it. What I have in front of me is the Arabic version of it, but inshallah we have the English. We need to make sure that we understand whatever masail we go through, and the goal, inshallah ta'ala, is to finish the entire book. So all of the chapters of the fiqh to be covered, inshallah ta'ala, in this year. And because of that, it's a very precise, very short book, and we will be brief, inshallah. It's not going to be with so much details or even mentioning evidences or differences of opinions as we heard before. This is just for us to cover most of the masail, or not even most, but many of the masail, but basically all of the chapters of fiqh. All of the chapters of fiqh, whether it's in ibadat or muamalat, transactions, matters of family, fiqh, other things, inshallah ta'ala, mawarith, even inheritance and everything like that, inshallah ta'ala. So therefore the goal is to understand the mas'ala, to understand what the mas'ala is, what is the point that we're discussing. And then we'll take the opinion, whatever the opinion is in the book. Sometimes we will mention what the present ulama are upon, or the majority of the ulama are upon, so that, again, this is what is being acted upon nowadays in certain matters. But what we have in the book, inshallah ta'ala, is sufficient just to understand what every mas'ala is. And of course, the fiqh is the type of ilm that deals with al-ahkam al-shar'iyya, the matters of ruling. And it's basically, as they translated, the jurisprudence of things, the practicality of things, and how to establish the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where basically the laws are and things like this. And it's based on the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And these ahkam, they call it al-ahkam al-amaliyya, or the practical rulings, as it's mentioned in the introduction of the book, that basically these rulings, or these practical rulings, whether it's between a person and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or something related to his own self, or something has to do with others. So whether it's speech or actions or transactions and things of that nature, and that's why it's divided mainly to the al-ibadat, matters of worship, and al-mu'amalat, transactions, and comes under the mu'amalat, or the transactions, the different types of relationships, even judicial things, and things has to do with rulings and punishments and justice and things of that nature. We'll start, inshallah ta'ala, right away with the ibadat, and the more we go forward, inshallah, we'll get to know some of the rulings, some of the principles of fiqh. So the first one is al-ibadat, matters of ibadat, and always the ulama mention the ibadat first, because this is the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's the obligation upon every person. And of course, the first of all of these obligations is the salah, the most important action, with its many rulings and obligations. And as a result of that, the first chapter in the ibadat is the tahara, or the purification, because this is the condition for the salah to be accepted. So it's always, the first thing is about the tahara, and the first point, or the first mas'ala, is the definition of the tahara, lughatan wa istilahan. And this is something that we need to get used to in matters of fiqh. They always have the definition of things. This is like law. You're studying law, so you have to be very precise. And studying fiqh teaches you to be very precise in your thinking, in the way that you speak, in the way that you do things. And every word matters. And that's why these words, they have its linguistics, meanings that is used, even before the revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the way that people might use it linguistically, versus what it means religiously based on the wahy from Allah. And forgive me, I'd like to go out of the subject, but some of the things that people have issues with and they confuse the masses sometimes these deviants is because of this issue. So for example, the word bid'ah, they confuse to the people what is to be bid'ah linguistically versus what it means to be bid'ah religiously. So when they confuse the people and they say this is bid'ah hasana and this is bid'ah sayyi'ah, this is a good bid'ah, this is a bad bid'ah. Like Umar radiallahu anhu, when he saw the people praying in the Taraweeh, when he gathered them behind one imam and he looked at them and he said, Ni'mat al-bid'atu hadi. What a good bid'ah that is. He used the word bid'ah. But what context he used the word bid'ah? He used it linguistically. And how can Umar radiallahu anhu would say how a good bid'ah that is when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if people mean it religiously, if the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, وَكُلُّ بِدْعَةٍ ضَلَالَةٍ. Every bid'ah is dalala. Every bid'ah is deviation. So there's no contradictions here. Bid'ah in the dalala sense, any bid'ah in the deen, any bid'ah religiously defined, matters of belief, matters of ibadat. But when it comes to mubahat, this is where the bid'ah means something, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is badi'u as-samawati wal ard, the initiator of the heavens and the earth, something invented. So something new to the people. Microphones is bid'ah, linguistically, right? So they don't make fun of things when they say, oh, this is bid'ah, so you're going to say that the microphone is bid'ah, stay away from it. And the lights and all of these types of things. This is, ignorance, with all due respect, because the issue comes from the very root basics of understanding even the concept of the deen. Always the ulama, they define things lughatan wa istilah. Lughatan, linguistically, and istilahan, terminology-wise. This is how it's been defined in the fiqh. And even sometimes the terminology in fiqh of a word can be different than the same word if it's used in aqidah. So that's where the ilm is. So when someone doesn't have knowledge and the matter is confused to him, so he will see the word sunnah in the books of aqidah thinking that it's a recommended act. The word sunnah in aqidah meaning aqidah. The aqidah of the sunnah, the aqidah of the Prophet ﷺ, a major issue, matters of aqidah. That's why you would find the books, for example, Kitab al-Sunnah and things like this with regards to matters of aqidah. And the word sunnah, if it's mentioned in fiqh, recommended acts. So the muhaddithin, the people of hadith, if they talk about the sunnah, it's more general and broader than this. So in any science whatsoever, people have to understand the terminology of it and what does it mean. And the people of knowledge, how they get upon the definition of things. So this is what ilm is. Otherwise, ignorance is something else. So at-tahara, purification, there's a meaning for it lughatan, and there's a meaning for it istilahan. Lughatan, what at-tahara means comes from purification. This is what tahara means, purifying oneself, cleanliness, staying away. Also, this is also one of the things that tahara means, that you clean yourself, and also have the meaning of staying away from what make you not clean, which of course it has an effect in the meaning of al-istilah or the terminology. And whatever you have in the English part of it, it's translating of what's mentioned in the Arabic. So this is linguistically, this is what it means, tahara. But fil istilah and the terminology, it's basically referring to a characteristic that a person is upon, or a state that a person is upon in his physical body that prevents him from making salah and the like of the salah, which is basically when a person is not in the state of wudu. He needs to do something called tahara to be able to make salah. So what does he do? He does not just clean himself with a tissue or a napkin. He has to make wudu. He has to stay away from najasat, which is the rulings that would come, inshallah ta'ala. So therefore, the tahara religiously means, as I read it in Arabic, زوال الوصف القائم بالبدن المانع من الصلاة ونحوها. Zawal, the removal of al-wasf al-qa'im, the state or the characteristics that is present to the physical body that prevents the person from the salah and the like of it. What's written in the English, if you have the English translation? how they translate it?
Removal of the attribute of one's body that prevents one from being allowed to pray and so on.
No, right? So this is what it means. So it's not, you see the difference between that and the linguistic meaning of the tahara. Of course, it has resemblance. The same thing for the salah, as it will come. There's a definition for the salah. Linguistically, whether it's dua, it means dua, means the closeness that a person is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, versus the specific salah with specific actions that starts with a takbir and ends with a taslim. Right? So things like this. So this is the definition of the tahara. What prevents the cleaning oneself or removing. That's why the ulama are very precise. Removing this attribute or this characteristics or the state that the body is in that prevents it from making the salah, or wanahwiha, meaning the like of the salah, like tawaf, for example, like touching the mushaf, for example, that requires to be in state of tahara. And then didn't mention wudu because it might be ghusl, for example. And there's two things, as also it's mentioned, is to be purified by removing the najasat or being away from the najasat in the three spots that will be mentioned, and to adorn oneself with the act of purification, whether it's with ghusl or wudu. So this is how simple it is. It's mentioned with the definition. Then the subject of al-miyah, or the water. And why the water? Why the miyah? Why the ma'? Because this is how we make wudu. This is how we make ghusl. This is how we make tahara. Even removal of the najasa is by using the water. And this is also an issue, a mas'ala, as it will come, inshallah ta'ala. But the first thing is when they talk about the different categories or types of miyah. And this is what he has. These three categories. The majority of the ulama are upon these three categories of the water. And it's just categorizing it does not really affect much the rulings. So the mas'ala here, this mas'ala is anwa'ul miyah. This is a mas'ala. The more you go further into the books of fiqh, you might find things with evidences, or is it two or three, things like this. But now we're just taking here the mas'ala. There's the three types of water. The first one is at-tuhur. The tahur, the one that is pure, and it comes from the tahara. But what's the definition of at-tuhur? The water that is tahur is, again, it's very precise. Al-baqi ala asli khilqatihi. The water that stays in its original form, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created it, which is basically what you can call water, something that you can call this is ma', not something else, not juice, not sauce, not anything. It's just the pure water, that the way that it was created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, regardless whether it has chemicals or not or whatever, but it looks, it tastes, it looks like water. So this is the first type, which is basically is used for the tahara. So this is the tahur. We have to memorize it in Arabic like this. And what's the water that tahur does? يرفع الحدث ويزيل الخبث or النجاسة. يرفع الحدث. And be patient with these terminologies in the beginning, but it's useful, inshallah. Al-hadath is incident linguistically, but in fiqh refers to something happened to break the state of purification that you're in. So basically what breaks the wudu, whether it's minor or major, that necessitates ghusl. So you need to have what type of water that you can use to make wudu. What is the type of water that you can make ghusl with that would lift that state of being in state of hadath? And it's not state of impurity, because they even sometimes call it sifa hukmiyya. That means it's not impurity. It's a state that a person is in, that as if it's impure when you're not impure. Mu'min la yanjus. The believer is never impure. So if someone is in required for him to make ghusl because he's in state of janaba, his body is not impure, right? He's pure physically, but as if he has that state of impurity that he has to remove by taking a shower, right? This is a non-physical state. I'm giving more details here, but the first categories of water, which is the pure one, which is a tuhur, it removes the hadath. That means you can use it for wudu, and ويزيل النجاسة, removes the impurities. So you can use this, you can use basically water, the water that is still in its original state, to purify your body if there is najasa, impurity on it, physical impurity, or your clothing, or the place that you pray on. And the ayah in Surah Al-Anfal is mentioned, وَيُنَزِّلُ عَلَيْكُم مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً لِيُطَهِّرَكُم بِهِ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring down from the skies water for you to be purified with. لِيُطَهِّرَكُم بِهِ. And this is, of course, very clear that this is the water that we use for tahar. The second type or category called at-tahir. So the first one at-tahur, the second one at-tahir. At-tahir also linguistically means pure. But what's the difference here? At-tahir is pure in itself, but it does not purify oneself. So, and this is where the mas'ala when it comes to 3 or 2 types of water. So this tahir is, it's a pure thing, but it doesn't purify. It's not enough, or it's not sufficient to make wudu with, which is basically the details of it. The color, the taste, or the smell of it is changed, meaning it's water, but the color or the taste or the smell of it is changed with something that is pure, that basically takes it to be something else other than water. So this is what the tahir is. So to understand what tahir means, that's where they say that you cannot use it for wudu. What is the type of water that you cannot use for wudu, even though it's pure? If it's impure najis, of course you can't use it for wudu. It's very obvious. But there is type of water that is pure and you cannot use it. It's not permissible to use it for ghusl or wudu. What is it? If the color or the smell or the taste of the water changed by something pure that basically took it from the state of being water in its original form. And that's very as simple as having lemonade, for example. Lemonade is what? It's water that you squeezed half a lemon maybe on it. Right? It becomes water or lemonade. It's called lemonade. Can you make wudu with lemonade? No. Person would say it's just a squeeze of lemon, half a lemon becomes, but you can't because it's not water anymore. It's not in its original form. And lemon, of course, it's pure. So remember that example when you think of at-tahir, because the same thing when you're cooking something, you put tomato sauce in water, it becomes something else, and things like this. So this is the tahir. But can you use this tahir to clean yourself from impurities? Right? This is he says it's pure in itself. إلا أنه لا يرفع الحدث. It does not again make you in the state of purification. But if it removes the impurities are removed. So the goal is that the impurities to be removed. So this is the second category of the water, which is a tahir. The third one, which is a najis. A najis, which is the impure. And what does it mean? What's the impure? It was water, but it got changed with najasa, with matters of something of impurity. Whether it's small or big, doesn't matter as long as it's changed it. So this is a mas'ala, and there's details in this, but we're only taking here. What is the impure water? It's where you cannot use for wudu, you cannot use for ghusl, you cannot remove najasa with it because it's already impure in itself. It's water that get contaminated with any impurities, whether it's lots of impurities or small amount of impurities, as long as the water changed. Right? So if the very one drop of impurity falls into a big container of water and nothing changed, no color changed, no taste, no smell of the water changed, that means it's in its original form. But it's changed with an impurity, the water changed, then it becomes impure. You cannot use it for wudu or ghusl, or you cannot even use it to remove najas. Right? So this is the mas'ala of the different types of water. This is very important. This is the basics, the first mas'ala that you will always see in the books of fiqh. Here we took it as 3 types. Right? So tahur, tahir, najis. To understand what tahur means. Tahur is pure in itself, purify others, purify you for you to make wudu and things like this and remove the najas. So the pure in itself, and it can purify others. At-tahir, pure in itself, but it cannot purify a person. Basically, you cannot make wudu with it. You cannot use it for wudu. This is the meaning of the benefit of it is not extended. It's only pure in itself. The third one is a najis, or the impure, where it's not pure in itself and it cannot be used for tahara whatsoever. So this is as simple as we would understand the three categories of water: al-tahur, wal-tahir, wal-najis. So we need to remember that, at least this is in Arabic like this: al-tahur and al-tahir and al-najis, and the difference between the three. Clear, inshallah? طيب. Masail and things like this, if it's not mentioned, inshallah, we won't be talking about it, inshallah, or this is later or in a different session. What happened if I enter the masjid? These things like that, other than what's mentioned here, we'll just limit it to what's in the book so that we don't get confused, inshallah. Then the next mas'ala, he says, there's one thing here missed with the najasa. يطهر الماء النجس, how to purify the impurities from a water. بزوال تغيره بنفسه, this is the first thing. Whether the first of again, the najasa means it's impure, change the water becomes changed because of something impure. Whether this impurity goes away, it's purified by itself, so that means the water returns back to its original form. So when you look at the water, it doesn't matter what the history of the water. The water that is present now is pure. That's what matters. Even if it was impure before, the impurity removed, whether it's by itself أو بطرحه, or to remove it. There was najasa, maybe physical, not something that is mixed. So you remove it from the water and the water returns back to its original form. أو إضافة ماء إليه ويزول عنه التغير, or adding water to it, and you add a whole bunch of water to it, so then it becomes pure as a result of the presence of abundance of water. So it was 1 cup full of water with impurities, then you added 2 buckets of water, and then it becomes pure. Like the hadith of the man that urinated in the masjid. The Prophet ﷺ, he said to the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, أريق عليه ذنوبا من ماء, pour on that impurity 1 bucket of water. That's it. He did not order them to do anything extra more than that, just to غمر المكان, to cover the place with abundance of water. That means the impurity is gone. And those who, this deed is based on simplicity, and the matter is not complex. So you don't have to take a sample from the carpet or a sample from the ground and to analyze it chemically to make sure that the impurities are removed completely. There's no such a thing. Smell is not there, taste and color, that means it's fine. So, but here he mentioned specific ways where the najasa is removed. And as long as the najasa is removed and the water returns back to its original form, then it's permissible to be used. So whether by itself or by removing it or by adding water to it. Clear? And the next mas'ala in the purification of the water, here, إذا شك المسلم, if a Muslim is in doubt, and pay attention to this because there are 3 masail, right? One after the other, they're very close to each other. You can confuse them. The first one, and they are referring to doubt, if you have doubt. And there are principles that governs when you're in doubt of something. And you have to be extremely careful with the doubt of impurities. The first one, if a person is in doubt whether this water is pure or not. You have a container of water. You're not sure if this is impure or not. If you're sure that it's impure, what do? You throw it away, you don't use it. Very obvious. If you're sure, if you have certainty. If you're sure that it's pure, the matter is over. You use it. But what if you're in doubt? And it's a valid doubt, not that you have some issues. If it's a valid doubt, you're not sure really if it smells impure or not, if it tastes or not, if its color is changed by something impure or not. So the shak, the doubt, that means both sides can be the case. So what happens here? The ruling, this is a mas'ala, right? So you have a container of water that you have doubt whether it's pure or not. The ruling here, as it's mentioned, is you establish this, and this is the principle. Ala al-yaqeen. You always go back to what you're certain of. What you are certain of, that this water was clean, and then something happened to it, and now you have doubt. So what's the original ruling or the original status? That it's clean. So since it was clean originally, to take it from being clean to be impure, you need to have certainty. You cannot go from the asl or the something that is a state that is very clear with certainty to something else with doubt. You have to go from certainty to certainty. Is it clear? So if you are in a certain state, right, for you to go to, which is pure, to go to the impurities, it's a certain state. What's in between returns you back to where you come from, which is being pure. So this is the first mas'ala, and the qaida or the principle that is used, that الشك أو اليقين يزول الشك لا يزول إلا باليقين. The شك يزول باليقين, that means the الأصل في الأشياء اليقين, that you have to be built it on اليقين or the certainty. You have to go back to certainty. So what is the asl? What is the original ruling? Everything is clean unless proven otherwise. So this is the first one. Clear? The second one is different. And by the way, you might also, that we're not talking about difference of opinions here. The second mas'ala is إذا اشتبه ما تجوز به الطهارة بما لا تجوز به الطهارة. You have now containers of water. Some of it you know that it's clean, and some of it you know that it's not clean, and you're not sure which is which. This is a different situation now, right? So it's not like the same container of water. Different containers of water, you know that some of it is pure, some of it is impure. That means if you use one or the other, you might use something that is impure or something that is pure. In that case, the ruling, as he mentions here, even though there's differences of opinions and so on, leave it and make tayammum. Leave it and to make tayammum, because what's the yaqeen here? What's the certainty? The certainty is that you have to check, because there's no certainty, because it's a bunch of containers. Some of it's clean, some of it is not clean or impure. If you're able to check and then you become certain this is clean, this is not clean, then it's over with. But if you're not able to, that's why the mas'ala إذا اشتبه. Don't say what if we check, then mashallah. But if you're still confused, then you don't use any of it, because the original status is that you have to check, because there's no asl, there's no original status here. You see the difference? The third mas'ala إذا اشتبهت ثياب طاهرة بنجسة أو محرمة. Now you have clean clothes and clothes that are impure or forbidden. And اشتبهت, that means you're confused, you're not sure which is which. So you have, you go to, to a closet, for example, and something was poured on the place or whatever there is. You don't know. So you're not sure which is, for sure that there is some impurity in some of the clothings, but you're not able to differentiate which is clean and which is impure. So some clothing are like this, some clothing are like that, and you're not sure. اشتبهت. You're not clear in this matter. What is the yaqeen here? بنى على اليقين وصلى صلاة واحدة. He would pray the yaqeen here, according to what's mentioned here, that he would wear it and pray only one prayer with it. One prayer only with whatever piece of clothing that he would wear. He would not wear it again. Right? So he would pray one salah only. So this is here. You have to wear clothing to make salah. And this is different than you have the previous one. You can leave it and make tayammum. But here you have to wear clothing to make salah. And this is the only choices you have. So you only use it once. Use every piece one time only. So this is with regards to the types of water and some of the simple masail here. After that, he mentioned the different types of tahara. Different types of tahara. This is from, you can have it included in fiqh, or the first statement when it comes to physical tahara versus the non-physical impurity or purification. So the physical purification, as it's going to be mentioned right after this one, but versus the non-physical one, which is the purification of the heart. So a person can have all kinds of najasa in his heart, but his salah is valid. And that's by the mercy of Allah to make it easy for each and every one of us. Otherwise, if it's by the najasa of the impurity of the heart, none of us will be able to make salah. Right? So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to purify our hearts. So that's why it shows the ulama when they mention this, to show the importance of, as you are so precise when it makes wudu and tahara, nobody would ever come to the salah with knowing that he has impurities in his body, because the salah is not valid. What's even as important is when it comes to the purification of the heart, and to purify our hearts with repenting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to remove anything that contaminates the heart from shirk and sins of that nature and things of that nature. The different types of tahara, as mentioned here from the fiqh perspective, it's basically two types: taharat hadath wa taharat khabath. Taharat hadath and taharat khabath. The purification of al-hadath. Al-hadath is the state that a person is in, or the ruling that it's upon his body that he cannot make salah unless he remove it, which is basically breaking the wudu or breaking the ghusl. How do they translate taharatul hadath? Just before the utensils. The first.
This topic too.
Oh, really? But this is important, so make a note of this, inshallah. It's basically that you have to be pure from al-hadath and from al-khabath. Hadath, khabath. Very easy. Al-hadath is an incident, which is basically what you broke your wudu. If you break your wudu, you have to purify yourself, and that is basically by wudu or ghusl. That's taharatul hadath. Taharatul khabath, al-khabath is the impurity. So physically removing the najas. So for someone to make salah, he has to have tahara from the hadath and tahara from al-khabath. Right? Salah is not valid unless you are pure in these two types of purification. The tahara of al-hadath, meaning being in state of wudu. As we said, the tahara means that you change that state in your body that prevents you from making salah. So what do? You make wudu. So you're purifying yourself from taharatul hadath. Taharatul khabath is the impurity, physical impurity. And that means you have to remove the impurity also on three things: your body, the clothing that you're wearing, and the spot that you're praying on. These three things has to be clean from impurities. And we'll talk about impurities later. What are impurities? So taharatul hadath and taharatul khabath. And al-khabath, or the impurities, to be clean from one's body, one's clothing, and the spot that you pray on. Taharatul hadath, which is the first one here, is three things. وهي الغسل كبرى and صغرى and بدل منهما. The major tahara, which is al-ghusl. The ghusl, they call it major purification, greater purification. صغرى, the minor one, is the wudu. وبدل منهما, al-badal is instead of. So if there's no water, what do? You make tayammum. When you don't have water to make ghusl, then you make tayammum. If you don't have water to make wudu, you make tayammum. If you have enough water to make wudu when you're supposed to make ghusl, what do? You make tayammum, because you're supposed to make ghusl. So tayammum is in place of the ghusl, or in place of the wudu, if there's no water, or if there's water but it's not enough, or the water is used for drinking, and if you use it for tahara, you won't have any water for drinking. And we'll talk about the tayammum and the rulings for the tayammum. So as he mentioned here, so we have three types of hadath tahara. Taharatul hadath are three: major, which is ghusl, shower, and we'll talk about that later, inshallah, and wudu, which is minor, and a tayammum, which is instead of either, if there's no water. Clear? And the al-khabath, so you can make it like a board, like taharatul hadath. You make a, what do you call this, tree, or like taharatul hadath and taharatul khabath. Taharatul hadath is three things, coming from it three things. Major, which is ghusl, minor, which is wudu, and at-tayammum if there's no water, then instead of the ghusl or the wudu. Okay? The second type, which is al-khabath, impurities, to clean oneself physically from al-khabath, there's also three things. Okay, so the major title is al-tahara, purification, to be pure, to be able to make salah. Goes into two branches, hadath and khabath. Al-hadath has three types: ghusl, which is the major, wudu, which is the minor, and at-tayammum, which is instead of any of them. And al-khabath, to be pure from physical impurities, is of three types: ghaslun wa mashun wa nadh. Ghasl is washing, and these things will be explained later. Mash, wiping. So whether with some things you have to wash it, the water has to run on it. Some things wiping, and some things nadh. Nadh is to sprinkle water in such a way that it covers the place. So the water is not running and you're not wiping. You just, some water is put on the spot that you need to clean, and it covers it without running, without the water running. So it's less than the ghusl, it's less than washing, and it's more than wiping. So these three types is basically according to the intensity of it, from the purification of al-khabath. Ghusl is the most, it's running water, it has to run. The second one is al-nadh, basically, which is water there, but it's not wiping, and al-mash is wiping. All of that will be, inshallah, explained when we talk about removing of impurities and things like this. So far is clear? Is it too much? Can we go further? Like the next thing is al-aniyah, utensils, containers. And why aniyah comes after what's mentioned about water? Because this is where the water is in to make wudu from. So you have to have container sometimes to make wudu from. So what is the ruling? What's pure? What's not pure? What's permissible? What's not permissible? First of all, the definition of it is, again, al-aniyah, or utensils. You don't have to know the Arabic of it. One is ina, which is the container, whether it's for food or drink. And many other words can be used for it. And it's the same thing that is used for religiously. There's different types. Do we need to know all the different types of utensils and cups and containers and things like this in the world? We don't have to. But we need to know what's forbidden. So, for example, when he mentions that there is gold and silver, there is, as he says, al-mufaddada, the one that has piece of it is made of silver, as they used to fix a broken, as the Prophet ﷺ had a cup and he was broken, he fixed it with fidda, with silver. He fixed it, put a piece of silver to fix it. Nowadays, for example, if someone's cup is broke, it's very expensive to fix it with silver. You just throw it away and bring something else. So you don't say, well, I'm going to put silver in it to fix it. But if this is the case, what's the ruling of it? Al-mumawwaha, as the third one, if it's painted, gold plated or silver plated, just and what's the ruling of that? It's not all pure gold or pure silver, but it's plated. There's very expensive material that is other than gold and silver, or whether it's expensive because of its material or because of how it's been manufactured, for example. It's more expensive, for example, than the gold and silver. Is it permissible or not? And there's the skin, made of skin of the animals and made of bones, for example, or wood and other types of things and so on. So what's the ruling here? Everything is pure. Everything is halal unless proven otherwise, right? So when it comes to containers and things like this. So if it's pure, and it's even if it's very expensive, you cannot say that it's haram because it's expensive. Right? This can go into other categories, but it's halal. You can use it, you can put water in it, you can drink from it, you can eat from it, except آنية الذهب والفضة, anything from gold or silver, it's not permissible. Whether it's cup, plate, silverware, they call it, forks, spoons, knives, and so on. All of that, gold and silver, is not permissible. والمموه بهم, and also if it's plated. If it's painted with gold and silver, it's still not permissible. And the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ is clear. لا تشربوا في آنية الذهب والفضة ولا تأكلوا في صحافها فإنها لهم في الدنيا ولكم في الآخرة. Do not drink in the containers of gold and silver, and do not eat in its plates, because it's for them in this dunya, meaning the disbelievers, and it's for you in the hereafter. The hadith is muttafaqun alayh. This is the evidence. You don't have to memorize it. But again, this is the mas'ala here, that everything is permissible except gold and silver, and what's plated with gold or silver. And also what's forbidden is what's forbidden for you to use, then it's forbidden for you to have. ما حرم استعماله, this is like a principle. ما حرم استعماله حرم اتخاذه. Something that is forbidden for a person to use. Like, for example, musical instruments. It's haram for a person to use. Is it permissible to have one at home, even if you're not using it? No, it's not permissible, even if you're not going to use it. Because if you don't use it, maybe someone else will, or after a long time, whatever there is. So, and this is for both men and women. If it's haram to be used, then it's haram to have. Some things might be forbidden for men and not forbidden for men, yeah, not forbidden for men, like silver, for example, or like gold, for example. Right? So women can wear gold, but not men. So if you have gold as a man, it's okay, but not to wear it. Right? This is different. We're talking about what's to be for wearing or for basically to as a container. This is haram, gold and silver. But here, this is another mas'ala. If it's haram in principle to have it, then it's haram to. If it's haram to use it, then it's haram to have it. And also, nothing becomes another mas'ala when it comes to the najasa, which we talked about it before. These containers, it stays in the state of purity unless proven otherwise. Right? So, and this mas'ala has applications to it, which is the next thing, the aniya of ghir muslimin, the non-Muslims utensils. People would maybe have unease. Is it clean or it's not clean? Right? So everything is clean unless proven otherwise. You cannot say, well, it's not clean. If you don't see impurity in it, right, that means it's clean. But when it comes to the aniya of Ahl Kitab or the Mushrikeen, the Jews and the Christians and other than the Muslims and so on, it's permissible to use it as long as you're not certain that this becomes impure. So, for example, if you go to a restaurant and everything is halal there, they're not serving alcohol or anything, and you're sitting and they bring a plate to you. What you're gonna say? I'm not sure if I can eat in this plate or not. No, you can eat, of course, as long as it's clean. You don't have to even ask because it's obviously clean. So unless you get to know clearly that this is, it's they put on it pork, for example, and they give it to you they just remove it like that, then it's obvious that you cannot eat from it. So if it's clean, you eat from it. And there's some other containers which is an issue, like the wood, for example. Sometimes the material or so soaks in it, so it gives a smell to it, which is, again, if it's washed, it's washed. So this is with regards to the aniya of the disbelievers or so. The same thing, another mas'ala here comes with the aniya is the clothing of the non-Muslims is pure unless you're certain that it's not pure. So you don't say, I don't wear because it's impure. No, human beings are not impure physically. It's if they use impurities, this is where it makes it impure. And if you wash it, then it becomes pure. Another mas'ala is the skin of the animals that can be used, the skin of the animal that can be used. If it's slaughtered, of course, it's obvious. If the animal is slaughtered and it's halal for us, you can use the skin of it, no problem. But what if it died without being slaughtered? If the animal died without being slaughtered, and this animal originally it's permissible for us to eat, like cows, cattle, basically cows, camels, goats and sheep and things like this, and it died without being slaughtered, you can use the skin of it if it's tanned. If it's tanned, it's permissible. Even though, again, this is the mas'ala. We're giving the ruling here. The ruling, you can have difference of opinions, but with the mas'ala here, you have to differentiate when it comes to the skins of the animal. The skin of the animals that is not permissible for us originally, whether it's slaughtered or not, then it's not permissible to use its skin. Pig skin and things like this. Whether it's tanned or not tanned, it doesn't matter. It's haram to use. But if it's the animals where it's permissible for us to eat, either it's slaughtered or it died without being slaughtered. If it's slaughtered, of course, obviously it's halal. If it's not slaughtered and died without being slaughtered, there's a difference of opinion. But this is the mas'ala. Then, as he mentions, then it becomes pure if it's tanned. So if you have something that is made from the skin of a cow skin, for example, you don't have to ask whether the cow is being slaughtered or not. As long as it's being tanned, of course, it's not like a fresh skin like this and you're going to use it. Clear with this mas'ala? We're taking two masail here. It's clear, inshallah, right? Two more and then we'll be done. Inshallah, if a part of a live animal is amputated, like the arm, the leg, for example, right? And the animal is still alive. As a mas'ala, if somebody cuts the arm of a cow, for example, or the leg, takes it off like this, or it get cut off, can you eat it? No, it's maita. This is maita. This is as if it's a dead animal without being slaughtered, right? So you cannot eat an organ or a part of an animal that get cut off from the animal if it's not slaughtered, if the animal is not slaughtered. But as far as the wool or the feather or the hair or anything like this, it's tahir, it's pure if it's taken off the animal when it's alive. So if someone, for example, take the wool of a sheep, for example, when it's alive, you can use it. It's not impure. But the skin, if it's taken off in its lifetime without being slaughtered, then it's impure. Clear the difference here? The last thing is, it's stressed and recommended to cover the containers and the utensils and things like this because of the hadith of Jabir radiallahu an, أوكي سقاءك, cover your water skin, cover your containers, واذكر اسم الله, and say Bismillah. وخمر إناءك, and cover like khimar, خمر إناءك, cover your container, واذكر اسم الله, and remember the name of Allah, say Bismillah. ولو أن تعرض عليه عودا, even if you have to put a stick on it, if you don't have anything to cover it, and you just have a stick, a pencil or anything, just put the stick on it and say Bismillah. And the Prophet ﷺ, there's another hadith that says that during the night, there's a night where diseases comes down. So that's the wisdom behind covering your containers of food. If you put it in the fridge, it's fine. If it's fruits, it's fine. You don't have to cover it. But the things that are things that are fluid, yeah, you need to cover what's in it, or cooked food or whatever there is. Things that you're going to eat, that it's you have to cover it. And if you don't have anything, and when you cover it, say Bismillah. And if you don't have anything, just put a stick on it and say Bismillah, because this is also related to the aniyah. So this is it. We finished the tahara and the aniyah, and then next time, inshallah, we'll talk about the istinja. Before, if you have any questions in 2-3 minutes, inshallah, the hadith of the day. You guys have the hadith booklet? You have it, right? I'm sorry? Okay. It's hadith number 55. So the hadith for tonight is hadith number 55, and it's every hadith is in one page. And the hadith is 3 simple words, so it's easy, inshallah, related to the subject, which is basically you can only say the words of the hadith if you know the name of the Sahabi, mashallah, this is great. So the narrator of the hadith is Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, the most of the Sahaba that have narrations of the hadith. And the hadith is, the Prophet ﷺ said, Fil Bahr, when he was asked about Al-Bahr, and Al-Bahr is the sea or the ocean, or he was asked about it. He said, هو الطهور ماؤه الحل ميتته. This is the hadith. هو الطهور ماؤه الحل ميتته. Say it. هو الطهور ماؤه الحل ميتته. هو means he is, or it is, meaning the water of the seas and the oceans. الطهور, pure, that means pure in itself, and you can make wudu with it, because he was asked, alayhi salatu wasalam, can we use the water of the sea to make wudu from? So he said, هو الطهور ماؤه. He gave him the answer that it's the water of the sea or the ocean and so on. It's pure in itself, and you can purify yourself. You can use it for wudu. هو الطهور ماؤه. It's water. It's tahur. هو الطهور ماؤه. And then the Prophet ﷺ is generous. He gave him more than what they asked for. So he said, Al-hillu maytatuhu. Al-hillu from halal. Al-hillu maytatuhu, it's dead, it's halal. So the dead of what's in the sea is halal, meaning the fish. The fish, you don't have to say Bismillah and slaughter it. You take the fish out and it dies, so you can eat it. Right? So Al-hillu maytatuhu. Its mayta is halal. So anything in the water, anything living in the water, if it you fish it, you get it, and you eat it, you don't have to start it with a knife. You can eat it like this. So that's what هو الطهور ماؤه الحل ميتته. So say it again. هو الطهور ماؤه الحل ميتته. Right. And you have what you need to explain in the hadith, but we can touch on it inshallah ta'ala also next time. But this is the hadith of the day, inshallah. Any questions?
For the water that is just because it has something that changed its color, taste, or smell, does the water itself also count as najasa if it gets on something like the area that you're praying, for example?
If the water gets on najasa?
Like the water is najis because something changed, something that just changed its smell, taste. If that water gets onto like a place,
yes. Now the question is, if the water that is already najis, impure because one of its characteristics, the color, the color, the taste, the smell is changed with the najasa, if this impure water falls into something pure, does it make that surface impure? Yes. And of course, it depends on how big or small the surface is and things like this. And if it's poured into another container of water, it depends also how big, if it's a pool versus a small bucket, things like this. The hadith, can you repeat al-hadath and al-khabath? Now, al-hadath is what breaks the wudu, basically. It's the state of the body that prevents the person from making salah, what breaks the wudu. And al-khabath is the physical impurity. And al-hadath comes from something happened, an incident, which basically when a person breaks his wudu, ahdath. When someone breaks his wudu, they call him ahdath. And the Arabic language uses nice words. Like ahdath means he had an incident, right? So that means he broke his wudu. No. There's a question, can we eat now? Can we eat? I'm not sure what can we eat means. But anyway, does the gold silver matter also apply to non-believers' utensils? Yes, gold and silver is haram for us to use, whether it's from a Muslim or a non-Muslim, or it doesn't matter. Any gold or silver plates, silverware, goldware, whatever there is, this is not permissible, whether it's yours or belong to someone else. How about water in a small reservoir used to make wudu in countries back home that has algae in it and water looks greenish, does it meet the tahara requirements? Yes, this is pure. So because it's still in the original form of it, as long as it's still water. So even if it changes its color to green or something like this, it's not called something else, unless it's contaminated with something that is not pure, or unless it becomes a paste of something. But just the water is changed because it stays or stagnant. And the stagnant water, as long as it does not have any impurities in it, it's okay to use for tahara or for purification. But we didn't cover these things, but it's good to know, inshallah. طيب, we'll stop here, inshallah. وصلى الله وسلم على محمد وصحبه وسلم. And if you have any questions, inshallah, we can answer it later. But if we're not certain if the seawater is impure, could we still eat the fish? The seawater is always pure. The issue of eating the fish, because they say, for example, oil spill or something like this, then you stay away from what's harmful. Or if it's a huge spill of something that makes it change it completely, which is what can, it has to be a natural disaster to happen. So, but you cannot make a ruling that the water smells not good or something like this just by normal things. It has to be some major disaster to make a ruling that the sea is contaminated, that it's not permissible for people to use for wudu. Wallahu a'lam wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka Muhammad wa sahbihi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.